Hi everyone, happy Wednesday and welcome to Wildcard Wednesday. Thank you very much for joining us today. We appreciate it. My name is Ben Pulowski. I will be your presenter today, and our topic for today's webinar is troubleshooting and maximizing device uptime. So our goal for today is to provide some different tools for you so that you can identify and troubleshoot a Go device that is not communicating. So what are the different symptoms, what might be causing it, and ultimately what you can do about it to get that device back online. Let's just go over our agenda for today. So going to get a little bit into the value of device uptime. Maybe self-explanatory, but why is it so important for you to make sure that your devices are online? We're going to look at some different reasons for why devices could go offline, and then give you some different tools to use in the database to monitor if the devices are online and communicating, including Watchdog Report, have a couple rules that you can look at, engine faults, low battery, and also looking at the health of your devices from the map screen. After we get into that, we're going to take a look at how to troubleshoot your Go device, the different lights on it, what those mean, and the steps that you can take. If you have a device that is defective, a little bit of information on how you can replace it, and finally we're going to send you off with some resources here today. And I'll let you all know right now that this deck that I'm going through, this presentation, you're all going to get a copy of this at the end of the webinar. So everything that I'm going through, you're going to get a copy of this for your own reference and to keep with your own resources. That having been said, let's jump into this a little bit and take a look at the value of device uptime. Monitoring and managing device uptime is crucial to a fleet's productivity. Now, there's two different sides to this. You can think of a vehicle that has gone offline or off the road, or a device that's gone offline, and they kind of go hand in hand. So looking at the vehicle side of that, if you have a vehicle off the road, well, that's a vehicle that's not generating revenue, and it's a vehicle that is incurring maybe some more hidden costs, like vehicle repairs or the fact that you're still paying the driver. Now, the other side to that is looking at if the device itself goes offline. And sometimes they're related. But if you have a device offline, you need to think that, well, this is a device that you are paying for. That is a vehicle that you are unable to monitor its activity or its driving behavior. You're not able to keep tabs on it. You're not able to manage that vehicle or that driver as effectively as possible. And you're still paying the monthly bill for it. So we want to help you keep your devices online and communicating and help you get the most current information. The burden of the responsibility to ensure that devices are communicating falls on the end user. Now, the point of this webinar is that we're giving you different tools to monitor this data, right? We want to help you succeed with this. Ultimately, though, it's not our data. It's not Geotab's data. It's your data. And we have certain tools in place to monitor hardware failures, and we'll get into a little bit of that as well. And there are times when we or your reseller may reach out to you and let you know that a device has failed in certain situations. But we can't be everywhere at once. So what we want to do is give you the tools to be able to do this yourself. One thing that might be especially helpful for you is to decide who within your company is going to ensure that devices are online, right? Maybe you have supervisors out in the field that are monitoring connectivity. Maybe you have the fleet manager is then monitoring the supervisors. Maybe you have a fleet of 3 vehicles and one person can just pop in the database and take a look. But these are some different things to keep in mind. We have some different reasons here for why a device would be offline, and those can be loosely sorted into 3 different categories. The first category is installation or hardware related. What we see most often for causing a device to go offline is a loose connection. Now, when you're installing your Go device, taking a look at those pictures over on the right, you have gap and you have no gap. That one that has a gap in it, and it's 1/8 of an inch, if not less than that, that's a loose device, and that device can go on and offline, and you don't want that. You want to make sure that there is no gap, that it is plugged in all the way that if you're using a harness, the harness is secured, the device is secured, maybe you're using a hardware mount, maybe you're zip tying it, maybe you have an adhesive mount. But step one is often to verify installation, make sure that it's plugged in securely. It's not that we're trying to be difficult. It's not that we don't believe you. It's just the most common reason we see for a device going offline. Some other instances or some other examples in that first category include it could be a faulty Go device. We do have a very low failure rate of Go devices, but I'm not going to lie, it happens. It's less than, I believe, 0.5%, and I might even be off by a decimal place or two on the low end, but it does happen, as well as harnesses can be defective. You could have a low vehicle battery, and the battery of the vehicle supplies the power for the Go device, or it could be something where the port in your vehicle is supplying insufficient power, tied into the low battery, but maybe you blew a fuse, or maybe for whatever reason there's a problem with the diagnostic port. It's not supplying the power to the harness or to the Go device that it needs to be. That's the first category. Second category is carrier related. So maybe you have a vehicle that is outside the coverage area. Now that's kind of a device going offline, because if you go and try and see where that device is on the map, it's going to tell you it's not communicating, but as soon as it comes back into a coverage area, it's going to send all the data that it recorded outside of the coverage area back into the database. So you're not really going to lose any data there. It's just a delay in receiving it, but that can still cause a vehicle to appear offline. Another carrier issue that you may have is a billing issue, and more on that a little bit later. Then we have our other external factors category. It could be that the device was unplugged. It could be based on the location of the diagnostic port. There are some vehicles where it's located on the left side, to the left of the steering wheel, and it's in a perfect spot for the driver to knock it with their knee or their foot every time they get in the car. That's something to be aware of. You could have physical or water damage to the device, or it could be something where you have a device that has been entered into and is attempting to report to multiple databases. So any one of these could cause a device to be offline. Something else to keep in mind here is the use of a T-harness. Now that can help a lot when you have vehicles, especially if they're leased vehicles that are regularly going in for service, and you need to have the mechanic have access to the diagnostic port. Part of a study we conducted of fleets with 15,000 devices or more, those fleets using T-harnesses saw an 80% improvement in vehicle communication. If you take your truck or whatever down to the dealer, they might not know what a Geotab is, and they know that they just have to unplug it to get to it and plug it back in, and they might not know how to secure it or be aware that that 1/8 of an inch gap can cause problems. A T-harness eliminates all of that because you have an open diagnostic port at all times. So there's no need to unplug the device to service the vehicle or flash the ECM, and the device is out of sight and out of mind. So that's going to reduce, for example, location of the diagnostic port where the driver can knock it, or a driver unplugging it. That's going to help a lot with that too. So monitoring device uptime, the place to start is with the Watchdog Report. And the Watchdog Report is accessible either through the database, or you can set it up, which many fleets do, as a dashboard report, and that's actually what we recommend. The Watchdog Report shows you the health of your vehicles, whether they are communicating, whether they are offline, or whether they have not yet been installed in a vehicle. If you look at that pie chart over on the right side, you see that they are divided up into categories, whether they are okay, where they have been offline for 2 to 3 days, 3 to 21 days, 21 days or more, or if they have not been installed. A Watchdog Report, again, can be accessed through vehicles, and you can click on that View button and select Watchdog Report, or you can add it to your dashboard as an emailed report. Part of the resources are showing you how to set up a dashboard report if you need a little bit of assistance with that. Here's a snapshot of the downloaded version of the Watchdog Report Pretty self-explanatory, but up along the top where you have number of vehicles in range, it categorizes them, okay, how long they've been offline, and then you have data on every individual vehicle. The vehicle, the group, the last known address, when it last communicated, how long it's been, the serial number, and the status. Another way, in addition to, or maybe just a completely different option from the Watchdog Report, is that you do have an unauthorized device removal rule. This is located under your stock rules, the big long list that you have there. The unauthorized device removal rule is broken when a device is unplugged and then regains power. So this is different from the Watchdog Report. Again, the rule is broken when it goes offline and then it comes back online. The reason for that is that when it's offline, the Go device loses power, and if it doesn't have power, it doesn't have a way to transmit its own status. So the Watchdog Report is a little bit different in that it will still show as offline if it is unplugged and sitting in the passenger seat. So for that reason, the Watchdog Report can be more effective than this. Now, something to keep in mind is that we do have a feature that we are expecting to be released later in the year, which is called Continuous Connect. This feature is still in development and, like I said, expected later in the year, not making any promises on the time frame, but that is a feature that will be able to alert you when the device goes offline immediately, and you won't have to wait for it to come back on. That's still on the roadmap for the time being. Stick with this and some of the other different tools that I'm giving you. If you are going to use the unauthorized device removal rule, and like any other rule, you can set up an email notification to generate when the rule is broken. If you're getting excessive exceptions, that can point to either a loose device or a low battery in the vehicle. The vehicle battery is running low. It doesn't have enough power to supply connectivity to the Go device, and it's like, I mean, think of a light bulb flicking on and off. If you're seeing 20 unauthorized device removals in a day, well, that's probably not the driver unplugging it 20 times. It's probably just flickering on and off. This can also be triggered, this rule, with an unplug event. That is a malicious unplug event where the driver reaches down and removes it and then later plugs it back in. Now this is just, this webinar is more focused around some other external factors or carrier factors, but for next month, one of our Wildcard Wednesdays is going to focus on different ways you can monitor actual unplug events if you have drivers who are trying to use the vehicles and stay off of your radar. Another way to monitor device uptime is looking at your engine faults report, and there is a distinction to be made between engine faults and telematics faults. So the first, looks like the first 4 in the list there: alert, accident limit for acceleration exceeded, telematics device fault, GPS quality poor, bad device install or vehicle undercover, accelerometer calibration in progress, accident limit for acceleration exceeded. Those are telematics faults. Those are faults, engine faults, that are coming directly from the Go device. You also get something like general vehicle warning light is on. Now that's telling you that there is something going on with the actual engine. This is very useful to keep an eye on these faults because, well, it can give you an idea of what's going on. If you look at the second item in that list, telematics device fault, GPS quality poor, over on the right, there were 30 instances of that event. Bad device install or vehicle undercover. Again, that's giving you an idea of what's wrong. My guess would be that's a device that has a loose connection, and you want to start with reinstallation. So keep an eye on not just the faults that you're getting, but also how often you're getting them. These are clues. You might also see a fault that says report to reseller, and there's a couple that are most prevalent. Telematics device fault, remove device and report to reseller, GPS module not responding, or flash memory failure. Now these are the ones that we internally here at Geotab monitor, and we make every effort if we see one of these faults on a vehicle to contact the customer or to contact the reseller and let them know. If you see this one yourself though, reach out to your reseller or your sales rep or whoever it is that you contact and let them know. But we do our best to monitor these. This is pretty much telling you right away most of the time that this device is defective and needs to be replaced. Different ways that you can monitor device uptime is a low battery. Low battery will show up in your engine faults, telematics device fault, low voltage in power supply, bad battery, or reinstall required. It will also show up in your engine measurements report, and you can look at the telematics device voltage measurement. What you want to look for is a device voltage between approximately 12 and 14 volts. When it starts getting down below 9 or 10 volts, or for big truck below 5 or 6 volts, then you're looking at a potential problem. You also have a rule set up for battery drain. This is in your list of stock rules. This is one that I highly recommend that you turn on an email notification for, because a low battery is going to take a vehicle off the road, and those costs that I mentioned earlier. So 3 different ways that you can monitor the battery level of your vehicles. Another way, and this is the last example that I have of how you can monitor device uptime, is on the map screen. Now you go to your map screen, you pull up your vehicle location, and like in that example over here on the right, when we have these vehicles listed, it says no communication for 7 days, no communication for 10 days. These are going to be at the bottom of your list of vehicles. So you're going to have vehicles that are driving, vehicles that are stopped, and at the bottom, no communication. That's another way that you can see that. Now you can also look inside of the vehicle. If you go to your vehicles list, and you can select your vehicle and you can look at the current install info, you might see that there's some activity there. So like this one says last GPS record was 2 hours ago, last device communication was 8 minutes ago, but you look at the map and it says no communication. That's a device that is most likely attempting to report to 2 different databases, and that doesn't work. What we see a lot is that we have a database that's set up for a company, and the manager says, you, Mr. Supervisor, you're going to monitor these vehicles. And the supervisor says, okay, and goes and they create a database, which they shouldn't do, and add the vehicles to it that are still in the first one. And then they say the devices aren't working right. That's why they're trying to report to 2 different databases. So this is something else to be aware of. You might also see all devices are not communicating. You go to your map screen, you have 25 vehicles, and they all say no communication for 6 days. That's probably a billing issue. So you want to make sure that your bill is current or that your carrier has received your most recent payment. So let's get into troubleshooting a little bit. So you want to start, of course, by verifying installation. The device may have come loose. It may have been unplugged, but you want to make sure that, first of all, it's plugged in and that it's secure. It may also just need a power reset, and sometimes that happens as much as we all deal with electronics every day. Sometimes you just have to turn it off and then turn it back on again. So we often use these as our first step. I've included here a link to a document for installing your Go device, and it goes over the gap and all those other things. That is a document there for you to reference. And it's a very simple process to install your Go device. Pretty much you want to plug it into the diagnostic port, or if you're using a harness, start the ignition, let it run for a few minutes. Once you've done that, once it's been running for 3 to 5 minutes, you can check in the database. You can also go to installmygps.com and see that it is communicating. All that information is available to you in this link right here on installing your Go device. For troubleshooting your Go device, it has 3 lights, and depending on what the lights are doing, your Go device is trying to tell you something different. The 3 lights are red, which indicates power, green, which indicates a cellular connection, and blue, which indicates a GPS latch. In order for your Go device to be functioning properly, all 3 lights need to be on. It needs power, it needs cell signal, and it needs GPS. Typically, the light sequences exist in one of 4 combinations. You may have red only, red and blue, no lights are on, or all lights are on. Again, typically you're not going to see something like green and blue, because if there's no red, there's no power, and if there's no power, you're not going to have any lights on. So just keep that in mind. No lights equals no power. That could be a few different things. It could be a blown fuse in the vehicle. It could be a faulty harness because the power has to pass through the harness to power the Go device. It could be a weak connection. It could be a low vehicle battery, or it could be that the port is not supplying enough power. The troubleshooting recommended, if you have no lights come on at all, is to install the device in a different vehicle. Ideally, it's a vehicle that has a Geotab that you know is online and working. If you are using a harness, you want to make sure that you try it with a different harness and just try and rule that out. Now, if it works, if you plug it into another vehicle and it works, or if you plug it into another harness and it works, that gives you the problem right there. If you try it in another vehicle with another harness, no lights come on, then that looks like it is a problem with the device. A green light equals cellular connection, so no green, no cell service. You want to make sure that you are in a cell coverage area. And one of the resources that we have for you are some different cell coverage maps for different areas and different carriers. You can try driving into an area with cell coverage. You can take a short 5 to 10 minute trip to see if the device comes back into sufficient coverage. Now, if there's no cell coverage, there's not a lot that can be done about that aside from be in an area where that cell coverage exists. The blue light means that there is no GPS signal, and you want to make sure that you are parked outside with a clear view of the sky. Other things to check for: are the windows heavily tinted, or is the device maybe installed up underneath the dashboard? And these are issues that we see come up most commonly with limousines, with the filament of the tint that they are using. Now, some possible solutions for that is to use the Go Rugged, which you could actually install on the outside of the vehicle if you wanted to, or you can take your Go device and you can install that on top of the dashboard if it's under the dash and it's not able to send its signal out. It could also be, if there's no blue light, you could also see interference with other GPS devices. If you have a Garmin or some sort of PND in your vehicle, it's less common, but we've seen it happen before, and it's something to rule out. The harness can go faulty as well. So if it's a defective harness or bent or contorted wires or anything like that. So we want to make sure to rule that out. Before I get into replacing your Go device, I just want to touch a little bit on what we're going for here, which is the process of elimination. So you contact support, or you contact us, or you contact your reseller, or whoever that is, and they come back with a million questions, right? And when we troubleshoot, we're not trying to be difficult. And trust us, we know that it can be a bit of a cumbersome process. And it's not that we're just, have all these Go devices and we want to keep them all to ourselves. It's the process of elimination. So we understand that you have a Go device that's not working, and that's frustrating. But if there's no lights on at all, that could be the vehicle. And we just want to rule that out before we go and do anything else. If you have no blue light on, we know you're frustrated, we want it to work too, but you're not getting a GPS signal. So what type of vehicle is it? Is there tint on the windows? Where is it installed? Where does this vehicle park? Is it in a parking garage? That can cause these things. And the point of this webinar, again, is to give you the tools to look at and think about some of these things yourself, because this is the information that helps us. When we have this information, when we know what lights are on, what type of vehicle it is, did you try it in a different vehicle, are you in a cell coverage area, where do you park the vehicle? When we know these things, we can fix the problem, we can diagnose and fix the problem that much more quickly. Now, sometimes you go through the troubleshooting and guess what? It doesn't work. Well, at that point, we look at replacing it. Go devices are covered under a limited 1-year warranty, which is limited to manufacturer defects. The warranty excludes, that is, does not cover physical damage to the device, including water damage, not covered, or any defects caused by improper installation. If you broke part of it off or if pins are bent. That is not covered under the 1-year warranty. Now, there are a couple instances where a Go device is covered beyond 1 year. Option number 1, the Go device became defective during the warranty period, and just as above, the defect was not a result of physical damage or improper installation. So if you have that, one of those report to reseller faults, flash memory failure, GPS module not responding, report to reseller, if that happened within the first year, then you're good and you're covered. If it happened after the first year, then that device is not covered under warranty. The other option for covering beyond 1 year is if the Go device was on the Pro Plus plan at the time of failure. Devices that are on the Pro Plus plan are covered under a limited lifetime warranty. Again, it excludes physical damage to devices, improper installation. It has to be at the time of failure. Unfortunately, you have a device on Pro, that device fails, you go put it on Pro Plus, we're not going to honor that. It needs to be on the Pro Plus plan at the time of failure, and if it is, limited lifetime warranty. So we're sending you off here with some different resources at the very end of the slide deck here. So we have a couple different resources on the Watchdog Report. We have a how-to guide, which goes into a little bit more detail on how to read it and how to use it, and a video on the Watchdog Report as well. How-to guide and a video on automating reports, which is useful to set that Watchdog Report up as a dashboard report, or you can also apply it to engine faults if you wanted to. A how-to guide on notifications, if you do want to receive an email notification for unauthorized device removal or battery drain. We also have a link here to a marketplace custom report, which is a telematics device issue detection. So way back earlier in the webinar, I talked a little bit about a bad device install or vehicle undercover happened 30 times. So this is a way to monitor those faults that are specific to the Go device and specific to installation, not related to engine faults, but can give you some very important clues about the device's health. The second page of resources here is just looking at different coverage maps for different carriers, both in the US, for which we have Sprint, AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon, and for our friends in Canada, Rogers, Bell, and Telus. There's some additional instructions here on some of these because right now Go devices operate on the 3G network. We are planning on releasing an LTE device later in the year, but for now, if you're going to look at coverage, you want to make sure that number 1, you're looking at data coverage and not voice, and number 2, you are looking at 3G or the equivalent and not LTE. Something else to keep in mind is that, well, these coverage maps are sort of a best case scenario, and often they are maybe slightly exaggerated by the carrier, so take them with a grain of salt. So that is going to wrap up our formal presentation for today. As always, we thank you so much for joining us on Wildcard Wednesday. You will get a request for feedback. We appreciate any feedback that you have to give on our webinars, whether it's good or bad. It'll make us better either way. Thank you for attending. Be sure to check out geotab.com/blog. We are updating it regularly with new content. Have a great day, and we hope everyone has a great week. Thanks, everyone.